Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's New York Sun Program Updates webinar. My name is Max Joel. I'm the director of the New York Sun Program, and today my colleagues and I are going to review some of the recent New York Sun Program updates, provide information about frequently made mistakes on applications to help contractors submit applications accurately, and answer questions at the end of the presentation. We can go to the next slide, please. Just some housekeeping items as we get started. First, today's webinar is being recorded, and a copy of the recording and the slide deck will be available online. We do encourage attendees to ask questions throughout using the Q&A feature at the bottom right-hand side, or that's where it's typically located. And we will address questions at the end. If you are having any technical problems during the webinar, please email my colleague Dylan Cunningham. His email address is dylan.cunningham@nycerta.ny.gov. Just before we leave this slide, I will say one more time, today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording and the deck will be publicly posted on the New York Sun website. Next slide, please. So today's agenda, I'll provide some quick background, and then we'll walk through the recent program changes that were based on the midpoint review order. There's also been some agency-wide changes to our finance fraud protection rules that we'll review. And then we'll have what I think will be a really useful segment reviewing some common mistakes that we see on applications that slow down both NYSERDA, but also developers who are submitting applications. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. And I'll be joined today by several of my colleagues. So next slide, please. You can go there. Great. So just some quick table setting. On June 23rd, the PSC released an order in response to the midpoint review that NYSERDA had filed earlier in the year. As a reminder, the midpoint review was triggered by the uptake of capacity in the program's upstate commercial industrial program. So the program, the New York Sun program, was expanded to a 10 gigawatt by 2030 goal back in 2022, and we very quickly reached what was kind of termed in that order the midpoint based on the commitment of capacity to program applications. That doesn't mean that half of that new capacity has been built. It just means that it's received incentive commitments from NYSERDA. So we filed a midpoint review, making some recommendations. We received an order in June and have implemented some of those changes. That is really going to be the focus of this webinar today. The specifics of those changes we'll be pointing out to everyone where more information can be found within the program manuals. There is, however, one additional next step that NYSERDA was directed to take by that order, which is to, by November 20th, file a proposal recommending stating how much unused New York Sun funding remains and recommending how many additional megawatts could be supported with it. Just to be clear, we won't really be getting into that item on today's webinar. Today's webinar is really about the program changes and helping developers submit applications. Next slide, please. And I'll just quickly note here that the Inclusive Community Solar Adder was launched last week. It is not the focus of today's webinar just because it's a very sort of in-depth and lengthy topic. There is a recorded webinar on the New York Sun page that goes into a lot of those details. There are, of course, significant details in the program manual and accompanying materials online. If you do have questions about the ICSA, you can ask them in the Q&A. If we have time, we'll certainly get to them. We will be trying to prioritize some of the questions about the other program changes and elements discussed in this webinar. So if we don't get to any questions you asked today, we'll certainly try to follow up. And you can also email questions to communitysolar@nycerta.ny.gov. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Allison Nelligan, to discuss some of these recent program changes.
Great, thank you, Max. So as most of you know, I'm Allison Nelligan, Senior Project Manager working in the CNI program. I'm also joined with my amazing colleague and partner who helped me, or who we managed together, the program, Candace Rossi, who I'm sure most of you know as well. But we just wanted to give you some updates, particularly in regards to the CNI projects. So the first one, and I know we've been getting a lot of questions, and I'm sorry we haven't been able to provide as much detail for some of you, but we have it clearly outlined here today in the presentation. I just wanted to start off with that projects in Block 21 with interconnection application dates prior to the April 2022 order, and projects in Con Edison non-residential block or later are now eligible to opt into the prevailing wage adder. These projects will have to provide quarterly certifications by a New York State licensed certified public accountant during the entire project construction period, and those will need to be submitted to NYSERDA upon invoicing for the commercial operation payment. I believe this is the most often question we get asked, but yes, the prevailing wage adder may be stacked with other NYSERDA adders and any federal ITC requirements. This last bullet is the most important bullet I want to make sure to share with everybody, is if you decide to opt in to the prevailing wage adder, you are required to follow those rules, and you need to be able to provide the documentation throughout the period of the construction period. If you decide not to move forward with paying prevailing wage, that will make your project eligible, or your project may lose all New York Sun associated incentives for that project. Or it could result in the contractor suspension from the program. So I know we have a very large volume of projects that submitted for the prevailing wage ahead of the program manual being released last week. We have continued to hold those in the submitted status until you are able to review this new language. What we highly recommend is if you're not sure if you are going to be paying prevailing wage, you can opt in anytime prior to invoicing us. We recommend you wait if you're not sure if you're going to move forward with opting in until you've made that determination. Next slide. So to align with the recent changes in the manual, contractors who are required to pay prevailing wage need to sign a new participation agreement. The updated participation agreement will be posted on our resources for contractors page. We will also be sending out an email to all contractors who have both submitted and approved projects in Block 21 with a link to the new participation agreement. And in that email, we'll also be providing you a list of all of your projects that would then now be eligible to receive the prevailing wage adder. We will be asking you if you plan to opt in or if you plan to wait. And we will also be asking you if you have any projects that you are looking to possibly assign. What we would recommend, just for ease of both administration side on our end and yours, is if you have a project currently in approved status that you are planning to assign to another contractor, and you are opting in to receive, or you would like to opt in to receive the prevailing wage adder, to let us know in that email when we send that out to you. So there'll be more information and details in that email. Next slide, please. All right, I'm now going to switch it over to Candace Rossi, and she'll go through the next couple of slides.
Thanks, Allison. As Allison said, I'm Candace, and I'll kick off some of the other program changes we have here. We are excited to announce that we have released a new floating solar adder for projects that are installed on bodies of water, such as lakes, reservoirs, and ponds. Eligible projects will receive an additional 15 cents per watt. To be eligible, projects must be mounted on floating structures or platforms on the surface of a water body and have also received non-ministerial permits to construct the project, such as approval by the DEC or potentially the Department of Health if on a public water supply. These permits will be required to be uploaded alongside the local planning and zoning approval confirmation. Additionally, it is required that the floating structure and anchoring system is clearly detailed on the site map that is submitted for the application. Next slide, please. So here we have the community adder. As announced at the end of September, an additional 110 megawatts of capacity was added to the current community adder block at the rate of 7 cents per watt. This represents the full allocation of the upstate community adder as authorized by the PSC in their May 2022 order for the New York Sun 10 gigawatt expansion by 2030. Next slide, please. So here I think many of you may already be familiar with this at this point, but want to summarize the changes that have been made to the CNI payment structure. I've characterized this into 3 different scenarios that I will walk through. So first, if your project has not yet received the commercial operation payment, then they have the option to receive a one-time payment of 100% of the not to exceed incentive at the time of the commercial operation invoice. Or you can opt to retain the same payment schedule of 50% at commercial operation and 25% at the year 1 anniversary and 25% at the year 2 anniversary, but without being weighted for actual production. So at this point, all projects should have been updated to receive 100% at commercial operation. So if you would like to receive the 50, 25, 25 payment schedule, please just reach out to Allison or myself and we can make those updates for your project. Next, we have the set of projects that have already received their 50% commercial operation payment. These projects will receive 25% of the incentive at their year 1 anniversary, and then the last 25% at the year 2 anniversary. So still would have that 50, 25, 25 payment schedule, but will not be weighted for production. And lastly, if your project has already received the 50% commercial operation payment and the first year performance payment, then for the year 2 payment, you will receive 25% of the incentive or the remaining amount of the incentive on the PO if the project had overperformed in year 1. Next slide, please. So here it's important to note that projects are still required to submit the production data to the DER website for 2 years from the date of the commercial operation invoice is approved. Now there is no longer a need to backfill that data, but you are required to ensure that the data is flowing to the site. And also, just as an FYI, these changes do not affect the Inclusive Community Solar Adder Award incentive payment structure that is separate from these changes. Next slide, please. So here we have another sort of big change to the program. So as we move towards 100% payment at commercial operation, we have decided to enforce a little stricter quality assurance requirements. And here we have the new updated contractor statuses, which I will walk through. First, we have the provisional status. So I think you all are probably familiar with this, and this has not changed. So contractors in provisional status will be required to have their projects inspected and pass that inspection prior to the commercial operation invoice being approved. Once 3 inspections are passed consecutively, the contractor will then be moved to full status. When contractors are in full status, they're able to receive that commercial operation payment prior to the inspection, but all projects will still be inspected. If one of these inspections is failed, then the contractor will be moved to probationary status. So this is a new one. So when the contractor is in probationary status, once again, all projects will be required to pass an inspection prior to the commercial operation invoice being approved. And then once 3 inspections are passed in a row, the contractor will be moved to full status. As we're now doing 100% invoices and all the money is going out the door at the one time, we want to ensure that these projects are still being built well. So we have just kind of tightened up on the inspection requirements here. And next slide, please. And I'll hand it back to you, Allison.
Great, thanks, Candace. If we can go ahead to the next slide. So our finance department across NYSERDA-wide has made some changes to our financial fraud protection rules. So I just wanted to go over some of these changes as it impacts our contractors. So our finance office must now confirm ACH payment information, so banking information, with the payee contact for every payment that we make. So prior, we used to recommend that payees sign up as soon as possible for ACH. With the amount of contacts changing for that payee, we're now recommending that you do not set up ACH until you're ready to submit your commercial operation payment. With that, our finance office does prefer all of these payments to be made via ACH, especially with the change to making 100% payments. These payments are now more likely over $1 million. So they prefer not to have checks sent out. So if you're not set up and you submit your invoice, our finance office will reach out to the contact that they have on file to request that you sign up for ACH. If you still prefer to receive a check, our finance office will also want to contact you and confirm the mailing address before payment is released. So again, highly recommend that you sign up for ACH right before COD payment. I will say that I believe checks are only cut once a month, where we do ACH multiple times a month. So ACH is definitely the preferred method going forward. The biggest point I want to make is if there are any changes with the point of contact for the payee once ACH is set up, this really is for any contractors who still have anniversary payments remaining on your contract. To please notify NYSERDA as soon as the contact changes. This way we can make the update in both our financial database and in Salesforce. Failure to notify us will result in payments being delayed because since our finance office does have to reach out every time, if we're not told that a payee has changed, it will just cause delays. So please make sure to notify us as soon as possible if there's any contact changes. Next slide, please. Okay. Now we are going to review some of the common mistakes that we see within the application process. So the first one is planning and zoning approvals. So the first two are the most important ones that we see the most issues with. If you're using NYSERDA's form, please make sure it's signed and executed before you upload it. It does not help if there's nobody from the town that has executed that document. Please make sure that that if you're not using the form, that the approvals that you provide have the project name, the size, and the address, that these are executed by the town or are on town letterhead. Sending us a Word document with just, you know, a whereas resolution doesn't confirm that the town has actually executed that resolution. So please make sure you have that. Additionally, with your planning and zoning approvals for your seeker, we do know that some towns do not execute part 3 of the seeker. So please make sure when you're doing your seeker, you upload parts 1, 2, and 3. If the town has not done parts 2 and 3, please just upload part 1 with the resolution. Just uploading the resolution is not acceptable for the seeker. The next one is the 25% interconnection payments. Excuse me, wire transfers and copies of a check are not acceptable documentation. You must upload the written email confirmation from the utility that includes the project name, CSER ID and the date the payment was accepted. This is specifically crucial to have the CSER ID and the date because that date sets a reminder for the 75% CSER milestone deliverable date. So we use that date in order to make sure it's updated properly, and we don't notify you that you haven't submitted those milestones sooner than what you should have to. The next one is the system size and equipment must match all of the documentation. A lot of times we see the application say one size and the 3-line and site plan may say a different system size. So all of those documents must match for the total system size. If they are not a match, we may have to move this back to unsubmitted status so that you can update it so all documents match. Next slide, please. So project addresses must match all documentation as well. So please make sure your planning and zoning approvals, the CSER, site plan, and 3-line all have the same site address or parcel IDs. Now we do understand that a lot of these projects are on large parcels that may not have a specific address. That's okay if it changes. The county 911 issues an address change, or the utility does a change for the point of interconnection. We are aware of that, and we will work with you if there's any changes to the address. We just have to confirm that the parcel has remained the same. So if there are any discrepancies, please just upload a document that outlines what those changes are or why those discrepancies are, and we will review those with you. The utility interconnection application confirmation, we really need a documentation from the portal that shows the date that the application was submitted. This is specifically crucial for projects with dates prior to April of 2022 who are looking to opt into the prevailing wage adder. So those are just some things that may hold up the review of your application. One of the other major ones that we see is the payee company name. We will see that the way that the payee is listed on the application and when the payee registers is sometimes slightly different. It's very important that you try and keep the names exactly the same on both the application and when you register it. We have seen sometimes where the same company name and they're set up twice in our system, and we just have to try and figure out which one is the correct one. So we want to make sure that we are associating the right payee with the right project. So if there's any discrepancies in the names or how they're written, especially if there are DBAs, just please let us know. That will just make it easier for us as we do our reviews. Next slide, please. Okay, I will pass it back to you, Candace.
Thanks, Allison. So here I have a few items we want to flag for the notice of intent as well as the project site mapping data. So for the NOIs, as a reminder, projects that are stacked or co-located are required to undergo a combined NOI review now. Even if one project is already built or undergone the NOI review previously, the impacted mineral soil groups 1 through 4 acreage will need to be aggregated across projects to determine the required mitigation. If you have any questions of this while you're filling out an NOI form, feel free to reach directly to me and we can figure out the solution for your projects. For the project site mapping data, if you are submitting shapefiles, please note that a single shape can have as many as 5 physical files with the same file name, but different extensions. We do need all of those extension files to be included in the submitted zip file. Also, there is no need to submit both shape files and KMZ files. Either or is fine. And lastly, the formatting of the file names is extremely important for the submission. So please ensure that all mapping files are named with the application number and the correlating layer. So fence, footprint, or parcel as shown on the screen. And just lastly, there should not be additional folders within that zip folder. All of the files should just be in one singular zip file that is named the application number. Next slide, please. So here I'll talk a bit about the common mistakes we see for project modifications and extensions. So for project modifications, please confirm that the populated incentive on the change modification application is correct prior to submitting. We have seen that the system sometimes does not always capture the community adder, or there could be some other error. And if you can just let us know prior to submitting the modification, we can update it on our end. Additionally, please be sure to upload both an updated wiring diagram and a site map to match the updated equipment and system size. And this also needs to be done prior to submitting an invoice, as the modification may change the incentive amount if the system size is reducing. So please just make sure to submit modifications prior to submitting invoices. Now for extensions, in the request, please be sure to provide a detailed description for the reason and need of the extension. If the project is mechanically completed or has received permission to operate, please include this in the request. Also, please include the confirmation that all planning and zoning approvals are still in place, as well as that the project has made 100% of the required interconnection upgrade payments and is still in good standing with the utility. And lastly, if you're able to provide the project schedule, inclusive of interconnection timelines, when you'll be requesting the building permit, equipment deliveries, construction milestones, and anything else that may be important to this project, that will be extremely helpful. So this will help us save some time on a back and forth, and we'll be able to approve extensions more timely. Next slide, please. And back to you, Allison.
Great. So I believe this is our last common mistakes that we have, and this is in regards to full assignments. So first and foremost, full assignments are only allowed once prior to submitting your commercial operation invoice. Once a full assignment has been executed, no additional requests or changes are allowed. We ask that you give us 3 weeks from the time a complete request is submitted for us to process that assignment. So 3 weeks is from the date that it's really complete. Payee's registered, all the documents are good to go, not just when you submit the assignment request. So we really ask that you please plan that accordingly with any closing dates that you may have. We may not be able to accommodate any urgent requests. I will say that this time of year is the peak season for us to receive full assignments. So the more you can do to have these complete and accurate at the time of submission, the faster we can process these requests that we have. So the first mistake we see is that the wrong assignment form is being used. So we have multiple assignment forms on the resources for contractors page. So if you have a project that just has what we call base funding that can include like a brownfield adder or a landfill adder, you would use the regular full assignment form. If your project also has the community adder, you would use that full assignment form. And then there are 2 other ones. If your project has received the inclusive community solar adder, there's one specifically that you would use for that, or if your project has received an ESFA award. If you're not sure what a full assignment form you should be using for your project, feel free to send me an email and I can confirm which one you should be using. If you assigned a payee at the time of application, you need to notify staff so that we can unlock the edit function for that payee. So payee assignments are also only allowed once. However, if you are doing a full assignment, we do allow the payee to also be changed at the same time as the full assignment request. So please make sure when you are doing your full assignments that if you are doing a full assignment and you list the payee as the new contractor as well, that new contractor will not have an opportunity to assign a payee after the full assignment is executed. If the payee name is remaining the same, we require you to re-register that payee. And the reason that we have that is we need to confirm that the EIN has remained the same and that we can update the contact information for the payee. We have been told on a few occasions that the EIN has been remaining the same, and come to find out when we get ready to invoice, the EIN had in fact changed. So that is why we require you to re-register the payee every time for a full assignment request, even if the payee name is staying the same. Ensure that you've uploaded fully signed documents and that they're filled out properly. We do see on the full assignment form, sometimes people leave a signor and a signee. You need to put the original contractor and the new contractor name in each of those sections, and they do need to be signed and executed by both parties. Additionally, on the project application, where you check the box for a full assignment and it asks you to enter the company name, you need to enter the company name, put a comma in the new contact for the new contractor. That contact must be the same person who has signed the full assignment form. If they are not the same, we will automatically kick that back and you'll have to get that re-signed. And lastly, 100% of the interconnection costs must be confirmed in the milestone marked completed before we can move forward with the assignment request. So if you have not submitted your milestones, you need to do that prior to us being able to move forward with the assignment request. Next slide, please. Okay, so that concludes the majority of our presentation for today. We will take a minute to go through the questions that have come through in the chat, and we will be right back with everybody. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A.
Hi, everyone. This is Max Joel again. Got a few early questions that I can address, but first I'd like to thank my colleagues for the great presentations, Allison and Candace. And I really recommend to everyone attending today that when we do post the slides and the recordings, that you circulate them to your own staff and your own colleagues, especially the common mistakes section. That is really a roadmap to speeding up your own approvals and processing time with the New York Sun incentives, and it certainly helps us a lot too. We have a small team, and we're really doing everything we can to make this process as smooth and predictable as possible for all of you. And along those lines, I also do want to thank all the developers in the industry for rolling with it as we see new requirements and changes come in, either through PSC orders or the program evolving. We definitely appreciate that it's a lot to keep up with, and understand and appreciate your patience as well. So with that, I'm going to answer a couple questions. I see one asking, just read here, will the PSC be able to add additional community adder funding if they want to, or is the current amount the maximum with no possibility of increases? So the current amount, and I'm assuming this question is really aimed at the upstate community adder. The current amount takes us up to the maximum that has been authorized by the Public Service Commission in their different orders. Now, the Public Service Commission, is the regulator. They have the authority to, issue a new order that could change that, including adding more CA, but that would be, that would be the only way that could happen, was if the Public Service Commission issued a new order increasing the community adder. It's not something that NYSERDA can do on its own. I also saw an early question that came in right at the beginning that I think we've addressed, but it was about eligibility for the prevailing wage adder and whether projects that would be receiving 30% ITC would be eligible. Uh, Hopefully this is clear from the presentation of the program manual, but the answer is yes. Any Block 21 project that meets the opt-in requirements, which are essentially that you're actually doing prevailing wage, is eligible to come in and get the adder. That doesn't really, from our perspective, we don't necessarily review or care what your ITC is. The project, as sort of a parallel example, the project could be safe harbored under the current IRS guidance and not be required per the IRA to do prevailing wage to get the full 30% ITC. But if it's in Block 21 and you actually really do prevailing wage under the New York rules, you can still get the prevailing wage adder. So I'm going to pause for a minute to look at some of the other questions that come in and then hand it off to some of my colleagues.
Max, I can go ahead and take a couple that have come in here as well. So one of the questions was, will our projects remain in submitted status if we do not opt into the prevailing wage adder until several months from now? So no. So once the email goes out to everybody, we will be asking you if you'd like to opt in now or wait to opt in for the prevailing wage adder. If you decide that you want to opt in at a later time, we would just need to confirm how you submitted your application, make any changes. If you had submitted originally for the prevailing wage, we might have to make some edits and remove that from your application and have a new application signed. If you did not ask for the prevailing wage adder and you still want to not move forward with it, we will be able to start moving those forward. So they will not be held for months. Trust me, we want to get these moving in the system as fast as possible. So another question was, is ACH for all projects or just commercial industrial? Our finance office does prefer that all invoices be done via ACH. They're much cleaner and easier, and they're confirming with the entity who's receiving payment that that's where the payment should be properly sent to. So that is a request from our finance office for everything to be done via ACH. So there was another question about subdividing a parcel, and you have a subdivision approval and the resolution and a new 911 address. But all the documentations will have the original address on it. That's fine. So again, as I stated, we prefer that you use the point of interconnection, the address that the utility will be using for the project address. All you need to do is upload documentation showing that this was originally approved here. This is the new county 911 address, and this is what the utility is using. Again, this is mainly for auditing purposes, so that if we are audited from an external state entity, that they can line up that this is actually the same project on the same parcel. So it's really for an auditing purposes. We do understand with these large parcels that these addresses do change. So you can just reach out to us directly and we can work with you to make sure you have the proper documentation. So there was an additional question regarding Con Edison territory. So this is specifically for commercial upstate. I unfortunately do not work in the Con Edison territory. So you can reach out directly to Jason Mangione, who manages our non-residential and Con Edison program, and he'll be able to address your DOB and address differences within the Con Edison territory. Another question we got, full assignments, what does no additional requests for changes allowed mean? So once a full assignment request is submitted and executed, there will be no additional changes to the contractor or the payee role. You will still be able to, and we would recommend any changes regarding system sizes still be submitted prior to submitting your invoice. That I'm going to take a break, Candace. I think there's a couple there for you if you want to take a look.
Sure. So there's a question here about the floating adder. So for a project applying for the floating solar adder, can they still receive other incentives under the megawatt block program, such as prevailing wage and the brownfield adder? projects will be able to stack it with the prevailing wage and receive obviously the base incentive, but you cannot stack the floating solar with the brownfield adder. I see another question here. Can you please elaborate on the commercial operation payment? So if you look into our program manual, you can see that when you invoice for a commercial industrial project incentive, that first invoice is called the commercial operation payment. You can see the multiple documentation that is required to receive this payment. So I recommend reviewing the program manual there. And another question here, is the prevailing wage adder continuing to stay at 12.5 cents per watt? Yes, that is correct. It will remain at that amount.
Hey Candace, this is Luke Forster. Just a clarifying point on that. The prevailing wage adder is 12.5 cents per watt upstate and 20 cents per watt down in Con Edison territory.
Thanks, Luke. Let's see, we do have a couple more questions. Where is the updated participation agreement? So the updated participation agreement will be posted on the resources for contractors page under the program manual section. When we send out the email to all of the contractors with projects in Block 21, we'll also include in that email a link to that participation agreement, along with the directions on how to return that signed agreement to us so we can move forward with your projects. So there's another question. In Block 21, applying for prevailing wage, the program manual states it will need to submit an addendum. So the addendum is different from the participation agreement. So prevailing wage applies to projects 1 megawatt AC and greater. So the addendum, I believe Sunny's on the line and can correct me if I'm wrong, is for projects that actually are for on-site projects where there is an actual customer, compared to most of these commercial industrial projects, which are community solar projects. There is not one use customer. So the addendum, it would not apply to those projects. Sunny, is that correct? Excuse me.
Sorry, Allison. I think, Allison, we need to take this back. My understanding was different about the addendum for the participation agreement. So if we can, come back to, if we can post answer to this question so we are aligned internally.
Great, thank you, Sunny. And we will include that in the email that we send out to all contractors in Block 21. So it will be posted and we will include it in that email. So there's a question, is the commercial operation payment the same as the New York State incentive? So the NYSERDA incentive is the amount that you will receive based on what you applied for the program. If you opt into receiving 100% of your incentive, then yes, you would receive 100% of NYSERDA's incentive at the commercial operation. So that's when the system is built, operating from the utility, and you've met all the other requirements, the site's reporting to the DER website. You would submit that invoice and we would make payment depending if you're a provisional contract or not after a site inspection, but 100% of our C&I projects are inspected. You could still opt in, as Candace had mentioned, for the 50-25-25, but we really see that most contractors are opting for the 100% payment at COD.
This is Dylan. I saw a couple questions about the webinar recording and the presentation slides and just wanted to remind everyone that those will be posted in a couple of days on the resources for contractors page, and we'll send a link once all those are available in the email.
So there is a question in regards to the potential for clawback for incentives for non-compliance with reporting for the 2-year period. And the question specifically asking total amount. So I think that's a question that we need to take back internally and provide an answer for. So the requirement is that you are required to report 2 years of data to the DER website. You are supposed to start reporting that data prior to submitting your invoice. That's part of the requirements to submit your COD invoice. And then from 2 years from the date that we have approved it is when you need to continue submitting that data to the DER website. So again, we understand there's some issues, an inverter may go down. We're no longer going to require you to backfill that data with our DER data agent, but you are responsible to make sure that you reestablish communication and that they are receiving the data. They will continue to send you emails if they start seeing lags of longer periods of time. You're just not required to go ahead and backfill that data. But regarding the clawback, we'll circle back and provide an answer on that.
Okay, great. This is Sarah from the New York Sun team. I'm going to answer some of the ICSA questions that came in now that we're getting close to the end of the Q&A. First of all, someone had a question. Can you please confirm that there are no changes to the version 1 program, especially as it pertains to the self-attestation letters still being valid for LMI customers? I just wanted to clarify for this person that there are significant changes between round 1 of the ICSA and round 2. So I recommend reading the round 2 ICSA program rules, which were released in version 17 of the program manual. Specifically, the question around self-attestation, we only allowed for self-attestation in round 1 if customers were geo eligible. Now, because we are not requiring self-attestation letters for geo eligible customers because the disadvantaged community map is now final, self-attestation for round 2 projects is not by itself a way to verify a customer's eligibility. So there are 4 different verification methods for residential customers. Please look through those. Those are the ones that are allowed for round 2. Second ICSA question, if a project was held in submitted status by NYSERDA to accommodate the expected update to the prevailing wage adder, will this affect eligibility and queue position for the ICSA? I think this is a really great question. Because we have a rule in the ICSA that we're going to be reviewing projects that are in approved status or completed status first. That projects in lower status, so that submitted status, received status, pending approval, we're not going to review them before the primary applications that are using approved status New York Sun applications. So and we're not changing those rules specifically around projects that are waiting on the prevailing wage. Our recommendation is that if a project is applying for the ICSA, they should really use a New York Sun parent application that is in approved status. And if they have any applications that are in submitted status, they should just have those be part of the portfolio, because that way, they're still able to get a bulk of their ICSA application reviewed. And then once we're ready to review those subsequents, at that point, I think we'll probably be in a good place for prevailing wage adder process. So feel free to reach out if you have more questions around that, but that's how we're going to handle those. Next ICSA question, they're kind of interrelated. We had a question about, should we be submitting all the applications as primary because we're worried about megawatt allocation running out? Or should we be doing primary and then subsequent? So this is a very easy answer. Projects that are using the same acquisition provider and acquisition strategy across multiple projects, you are required to do a portfolio. There's not an option of one versus the other. You will be required to submit that primary kind of so that we can look at what your plan strategy is for a single application, and then you would submit all the applications that are going to be using that same strategy and that same acquisition provider after we approve that primary. And the second question we had was questions about the number of projects that have come in. The dashboards show that it's only 0% allocated. I think they're trying to make sure that there isn't a technical issue with the dashboard. We have started to see applications come in. We're still under 1%. So that's why it says 0%, but we do have some submitted applications coming in. So I hope that addresses the concerns of the person who asked the question. We have plenty of capacity, in these first couple weeks of the ICSA. So, don't try to game the system. Do what is required in the program rules. If you do try to game the system, we will have to kind of reject your application, and you'll get moved back in the queue at that point anyway. So that's it for ICSA questions that have come in so far.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. So another question that came in, and I see that we have a couple that Max is going to be addressing, but it says, can you opt into the prevailing wage adder after a full assignment? So yes, you can. However, if you do know prior to executing the assignment that you definitely want to do the prevailing wage, we would prefer to do it at the same time. We can kill two birds with one stone and do one contract action, and then having to have multiple contract actions instead of the one. So it is easier, but you do not have to do it. I just would highly recommend, if you know at the time of full assignment you do want to do the full prevailing wage adder, we should do that at the same time. And Candace, I think you had one more question.
Yeah, so we got a question about the notice of intent process. So the question is, by stacked projects with the NOI, do you mean multiple solar arrays on the same piece of property? You can find the definition or how we are defining stacked projects within the NOI submission forms themselves. But for clarification, we consider stacked projects as multiple projects greater than 1 megawatt DC that are abutting and located on parcels of real property that are owned by the same landowner. So it doesn't necessarily have to be all on one parcel. They could just be separate parcels, but if they're abutting and the same landowner, they would be considered stacked projects.
We did get another question regarding the prevailing wage adder and how it would be paid. So the prevailing wage adder will be paid how you elect to do it. So if you want to be paid 100% at COD, then the prevailing wage adder would be paid the same. If you decide to move forward with the 50-25-25 structure, then 50% of the prevailing wage would be paid, and then 25% of it at year 1 and year 2 for your anniversary dates. Max, I think I'll pass it over to you. I know there were a few questions with your name next to them.
Thanks, Allison. So I'll grab a couple here. There was a question about the potential for future battery storage incentives. Just refer people to the energy storage roadmap that's currently before the Public Service Commission. The timeline and details on that are to be determined by the PSC, but NYSERDA can't issue new funds without that funding approval. Another question about a different program. Is there any intent to bring back the companion loans for residential projects? That's referencing the companion loans to the Green New York residential loan. The person asking the question notes that in the area they work, they really need the companion loan to be able to fully finance a system. And we're definitely aware of that and sympathetic. Unfortunately, no funding is currently available, and we don't have any updates on if and when that funding would become available at a later date. Another prevailing wage adder question that I think kind of just connects with this conversation. If you are safe harbored and elect to not opt into the New York Sun prevailing wage adder, do you lose your rights to the other adders, such as the megawatt block, the community adder, and the ICSA? So the answer there is it depends. The 2022 commission order that expanded the program and established the prevailing wage adder set a hard requirement for projects that submitted interconnection applications after that order came out are just required to do prevailing wage under the New York rules, no matter what. So if your project falls into that category, submitted a um, interconnection application in the last year and a half or so, it really doesn't matter whether you're safe harbored under the IRS rules. You are required to do prevailing wage under the New York rules. However, I suspect the project that this question is about is not in that status, just given the timing. If your project was not required by the 2022 order to do prevailing wage, but is now in block 21 or later and may have the option of opting into the prevailing wage adder by doing prevailing wage as we've just been discussing, that is indeed an option. So if you weren't required to do the prevailing wage before under New York rules, you're not there was no kind of added requirement in the order. In the new order is just an added option. So again, if you had an interconnection application before the trigger date in the 2022 order, when you're not doing prevailing wage, that's fine. Safe harbor or no, you can just go through the regular incentive process. And I think with that, I also kind of answered, there were just some questions here about the history of the prevailing wage adder that I think I've addressed there, but people can always look back at the different orders in the New York Sun operating plan that explains that pretty thoroughly. Um, Another question about the prevailing wage adder is just is there a block capacity for the prevailing wage adder? So there are only so many megawatts. Technically, no. There is a total budget for the prevailing wage adder that was approved in the 2022 order. That would cover both the Con Ed and upstate prevailing wage adder. And as my colleague Luca was right to sort of clarify and emphasize, it is a different incentive rate depending on where the project is located. However, in the midpoint review and when we made the recommendation to expand the prevailing wage adders eligibility to those opt-in projects in block 21 of the CNI program or block 2, and later of the Con Ed program, that was after doing an analysis of the budget and identifying that we really expect there to be sufficient funding for all of the projects that will seek it or be required to seek it. There was switching gears a little, there's a question about tax credits and payments to tax exempt entities such as a church. I'll note that this question starts with a statement: the New York Sun incentive is always paid directly to the contractor to reduce the out-of-pocket costs for the customers. I'll just note there that's not entirely correct. There is the option of having a payee who is not the contractor, and that could be a building owner or another party, so the entity that's receiving the payment. The rest of this question asks about sort of I think it's sort of like the direct pay, or also known as elective pay process, with the tax credits and tax payments for a nonprofit entity. I think we're not really able to answer those questions about taxes. That's something that should be either addressed to the IRS or to an accountant who your company is working with. And I think that okay. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah because there's another ICSA one she'd like to address.
Yeah, I know we're at time, but I think this is an important one, everybody. So somebody asked regarding ICSA round one, are the rules for those projects staying the same, or do those projects now have to use the round two rules? I think that's a really great question. So round one projects are still subject to the round one rules. The kind of detail around the round one rules are in version 14 of the program manual. If you'd like a copy of that, we're happy to send it to you. Round two projects are subject to the round two rules. And so the round two rules are the ones that we released last week. Round one projects, it's in the round two rules, can get some of the efficiencies from the round 2 program. So especially around disadvantaged communities, they would have to opt into it. And there are details on how to opt into that in the program manual, in the version 17 program manual. So thank you for the individual who asked that question. And I think we're
All
up
right.
over time now.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. We are at time. I think we answered most of the questions, but we'll certainly follow up on any we missed. Thank you to everyone who attended, and thank you to my colleagues on the New York Sun team for putting together this webinar, and of course all the great work that you do every day. Have a terrific afternoon, everyone.